Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Husbands, the Learning and Development Consultant here at Cornerstone Resources, and thank you for joining today's session as part of our 2026 Interactive Online series. This session is a practical update on the Employment Rights Act 2025 and what it means for leaders and employers in real terms. Our aim today is to bring some clarity to what your organisation needs to prepare for. We'll focus on what's coming into force, what that means operationally, and where organisations are most likely to see risk if preparation isn't in place as well. Everything we're sharing today is accurate as of today. As with any major legislative reform, some details may continue to evolve as secondary regulations are finalised, and we'll continue to share updates where that happens. But yeah, let's get started and go through what we're going to cover today. So what we're going to cover today is some of the essentials you need to know and act upon. So what the Act is aiming to change, key changes and confirmed timelines, what employees must actively prepare for, where organisational risk will sit, and then what I hope to give you is also a simple readiness checklist so you know what you need to cover off over the coming weeks and months. In the original interactive online session that we ran, we also had a live Q&A at the end. And if you do have any questions, I really encourage you to get in touch with your consultant, and they'll be able to help you out and support you there. As I've mentioned, some elements of what we'll cover today have confirmed dates. Some are confirmed in principle but subject to any regulations, and some remain under consultation as well. So at Cornerstone, we commit to keeping you updated throughout, and your consultant will also help you do that as well as the regular sort of updates we send out too. So what is the Employment Rights Act 2025? At a high level, the Employment Rights Act is about consolidation and strengthening. So it brings together and reinforces key UK employment protections under a more unified framework. There's also a strong emphasis on greater clarity, particularly around fairness, transparency, and enforceability across employment relationships. And importantly, this isn't something that just sits with HR. The operational impact is significant. These changes affect leaders and managers directly and extend well beyond HR departments. And finally, we're seeing increased scrutiny as well. So documentation and decision-making processes are likely to face heightened examination, particularly where disputes arise as well. So while this is legislative reform, its real impact, is operational. So it applies to a lot of people in the organization. Before we move into the reforms, it's worth pausing and recognizing that the employment law landscape has already shifted quite significantly over the past 18 to 24 months. We've seen that a flexible working has come in as a day one right. So since April 2024, flexible working has been a day one right, which means employees no longer need 26 weeks service to request flexible working. Employees must consider requests reasonably respond within a space to demonstrating if finding a request as well. In practice, this has required clearer documentation and more confident manager conversations as well. In October 2024, the law also shifted from a reactive approach to a proactive one. Employers now have a positive duty to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment. So that means it's not enough to respond well when something happens. Organizations must be able to show preventative steps. That's things like training, policies, culture, reporting mechanisms. If those preventative steps aren't in place, tribunals now have the power to uplift compensation. So there is a financial penalty too. Carers leave was introduced as a statutory right as well, giving employees unpaid leave to support dependents with long-term care needs. And operationally, this means that managers need to understand that this right actually exists and treat requests appropriately, particularly where employees may not use formal terminology as well. And more recently, neonatal care leave was introduced, providing additional leave and in some cases pay for parents of babies requiring neonatal care. Eligible employees can take up to 12 weeks of additional leave, depending on the length of hospital care here too. So for employers, the practical impact is ensuring policies, payroll systems, and manager awareness reflect this entitlement. But for most businesses and most organizations, this will be rare, but when it arises, it is significant. And alongside structural reforms, we also see annual statutory rate increases as well. So this includes things like minimum wage, statutory sick pay, and family leave payments too. So these have real payroll and budgeting implications for SMEs. So the Employment Rights Act reforms sit within an already evolving employment landscape. So for many organisations, the Employment Rights Act isn't the starting point, it's actually another layer on top of an already evolving framework. So what we're seeing is a clear direction of travel, more day one rights, more proactive employer duties, and stronger enforcement as well. So this session focuses on the most operationally significant changes. For many organisations, the challenge isn't one major change, it's keeping pace and cumulative change. What's reassuring to know is that many organisations are still embedding these changes, and full legislative detail continues to evolve, and will monitor this on an ongoing basis because there are several changes to be aware of, and we'll keep you updated as one of our clients as well. So before the April changes, there was an earlier commencement phase this month, or in February last month. This included elements of the repeal of parts of the Trade Union Act, particularly around ballot thresholds and procedural requirements. In practical terms, this simplifies aspects of industrial action processes, and for many SMEs without recognised unions, this may have limited direct impact. There were also adjustments to family leave notice provisions, simplifying notice requirements in certain circumstances. And in practical terms, that means employees may have more flexibility in how and when they give notice, and in some cases, shorter notice periods apply as well. So for employees, the key point really is that managers shouldn't assume the old notice rules still apply. Policies and guidance should reflect the updated framework too. And the key action here is simply ensuring policies reflect that. So February marked the first phase of reform. April and October represent more operationally visible milestones. So these are the key update slides really. What is actually changing in 2026 and when those changes take effect. So the first major operational milestone is in April, so the 6th and 7th of April. That's the main phase of implementation. From 6th of April, statutory sick pay, also known as SSP, which I'll refer to as for the rest of this session, becomes payable from day one of absence. So the previous waiting days are removed, and importantly, the lower earnings limit is also removed. So that means more employees will qualify for SSP, and payment begins immediately rather than after 3 waiting days. So for employers, the biggest implication isn't just cost, it's process. Absence management needs to be structured, consistent, and well documented. Return to work conversations, trigger points, and record keeping become even more important. And where managers are informal about short-term absence, that's where risk can really creep in. So this is as much about strengthening absence management practice as it is about payroll. We're actually running another one of these sessions on this coming Friday. So really encourage you to join that if you want to find out a bit more depth around that one as well. Also from April, paternity leave and unpaid parental leave become day one rights. That means employees are eligible from the start of employment. There's no qualifying period there. So for SMEs in particular, the practical impact is that managers may receive leave requests very early in someone's employment. This doesn't remove your ability to manage performance or expectations, but it does mean you need to handle those requests correctly and consistently. Recruitment conversations, onboarding discussions, and probation reviews need clear documentation, and where things are recorded properly, there's far less exposure there. From April, we also see the formal establishment of the Fair Work Agency. So this is a new enforcement body with investigatory powers. What that means for organisations is a greater likelihood of proactive enforcement. So documentation and compliance processes need to be audit ready, not just theoretically compliant, but practically demonstrable. And it's a shift from reactive to potentially more proactive oversight. And that's a theme with a lot of these changes, moving from being reactive to being proactive. We're also seeing strengthened whistleblowing protections, including clearer coverage where disclosures relate to harassment and specifically sexual harassment here. The key operational implication here is ensuring internal reporting processes are clear, accessible, and genuinely safe. If managers are poorly briefed, the risk of inadvertent retaliation increases there. And this isn't about expecting more complaints, it's about ensuring that the process stands up to scrutiny should something arise. So April 2026 is less about one dramatic headline change and it's more about cumulative impact. Day one rights expand, enforcement strengthens, and eligibility widens. So for employers, the focus should be preparation rather than reaction. The organizations who feel calm about this one, from our experience, are the ones who've reviewed documentation early, brief managers clearly, and treat this as part of an ongoing shift and not a sudden shock. But looking slightly further ahead, we move into the next expected phase, which is August 2026. This centres on electronic and workplace balloting reforms. So, in practical terms, it means balloting processes for industrial action may move towards electronic or workplace-based methods. The intention is to simplify and modernise how unions conduct ballots here. So, for organisations with recognised trade unions, this could mean balloting processes become more streamlined. For many SMEs without unionised workforces, this may have little immediate impact. Where it is relevant, the focus should be on ensuring internal communication channels are clear and that contingency planning is proportionate to your workforce structure too. So this is not about expecting disruption, it's about understanding how the landscape may evolve. And then in October 2026, this is far more significant phase of reform. The focus shifts from individual entitlements to employer responsibility and enforcement. So in simple terms, it's less about what employees can claim and more about what employers must do proactively and proactively demonstrate. So the first one here is all reasonable steps duty. So one of the key developments is strengthening what's known as this duty. This relates to preventing workplace harassment. Previously, employers needed to show that they had taken reasonable steps to prevent harassment. The expectation now is higher, so employers must be able to demonstrate that they took all reasonable steps. That doesn't mean perfection, it means you need to show proactive action. So, for example, clear and up-to-date policies, as I've mentioned, regular training for managers and staff, clear reporting routes, prompt investigation when concerns do arise. If a tribunal were to ask, what did you do to prevent this? There needs to be evidence. And for smaller organizations, this is less about having complex systems and more about consistency and documentation. The next one is third-party harassment. So this is closely linked. This refers to harassment by customers, clients, service users, or members of the public. So for hospitality, retail, care settings, churches, or any public-facing organization, this is particularly relevant. So if an employee is harassed by a customer or service user and the employer does nothing or fails to take preventative steps, there may be liability. So that means clear reporting processes, visible action, and support for staff when and where incidents occur is important. You're not expected to control every external person's behavior. We can't do that, but you are expected to respond appropriately. The next one is tipping reforms. So in October, we bring further clarity around these reforms. Employers must ensure tips and service charges are distributed fairly and transparently. That includes having a written tipping policy, keeping a records of how tips are allocated, and consulting workers where required as well. So for some businesses and some organizations, this will require minor documentation updates. For others, particularly in hospitality, this may require more structured processes too. And then finally here, we have another key change, which is the extension of certain tribunal claim limits. In practical terms, employees may have longer to bring certain claims. The longer the window for claims, the more important your records become. So this means that notes written at the time and not reconstructed months later carry much more weight. Good documentation is not about being defensive, it's about being organized here. So October again isn't about dramatic new entitlements, it's about accountability really. The expectation is that employers can demonstrate proactive prevention, fair allocation of benefits, and consistent documentation. So for SMEs, this doesn't require complexity, it requires clarity and consistency. But the most significant structural reform arrives on the 1st of January 2027. So the qualifying period for unfair dismissal reduces from 2 years to 6 months. And the statutory cap on unfair dismissal compensation is removed as well. So this significantly increases risk exposure in the first year of employment. Probation periods can no longer be treated as a low risk space. So with this qualifying period reducing, probation processes will need to be structured, reviewed, and well documented. But this isn't just about unfair dismissal risk. A well-run probation period gives clarity to both the employer and the employee as well. It sets expectations early, provides feedback quickly, and identifies issues before they escalate as well. So when probation is informal or inconsistent, that's when both performance issues and legal risks tend to surface. So structured probation is good management practice first and good risk management second. Informal dismissal decisions, particularly those based on a vague fit concern, become materially higher risk here. This doesn't mean employers lose flexibility, it just means that process and evidence matter more. And beyond that, further reforms are expected through 2027. So these include guaranteed hours protection, further flexible working reforms, and bereavement leave rights too. Exact commencement dates for these ones are still to be confirmed, and we'll share those updates in due course once we know them. The right to request a more predictable working pattern has also come into force here too. So, which is particularly relevant in sectors using variable hours or atypical contracts too. So, organizations will need a clear process for handling these requests and documenting decisions. The key message here isn't panic, it's about progression. This is a multi-year shift in employment rights, and organizations will need ongoing policy updates and continued manager capability development too. So again, something I'd just like to reiterate here is that the dates we've talked about reflect current government commencement regulations and may be updated once they're finalised. But like I say, we'll keep you updated if you're one of our clients too. So now we've been through the changes, let's think about what you as an employer need to do practically. So before April 2026, what we encourage you to do is to review your contracts and written statements, audit flexible working policies, ensure documentation aligns with updated statutory wording, and also brief your senior leadership on the risk exposure too. And then by summer 2026, encourage you to review redundancy processes and consultation standards, strengthen your documentation and your audit trails, and train your managers on consistent application of the policy, because that's what's really key here. It's great having policy, but what we really need to do is make sure that people are applying the policy into real life, into our day-to-day operations. And then beyond that, we again encourage you to monitor updates and statutory guidance, refresh your manager training regularly because things change. We'll start to see sort of things pop up in behaviours that we perhaps weren't aware were going to happen. Again, picking up on this stuff and then training so we can apply consistency across organisations is always good practice. And then finally, align practice with policy continuously. That's not something I can repeat enough. It's great when organizations have documentation in place, but we really want people to be applying them in what they do and their behaviors too. So when legislation does change, most organizations don't get into difficulty because they disagree with the law. They often get into difficulty because practice doesn't quite keep up, as I kind of just alluded to on that previous slide. So based on what we're seeing across organizations, risk tends to sit in 5 predictable areas. So the first one is early stage employment decisions. So with the qualifying period for unfair dismissal reducing to 6 months and more day one rights coming in, first few months of employment become higher risk. What this means is that recruitment decisions, onboarding conversations, and probation reviews need more structure and documentation. So the days of informal, it's just not working out conversations without clear evidence are really reducing here. So it's not about being defensive, it's about being disciplined. Second, inconsistent flexible working responses. So flexible working has already become a day one right, and we continue to see requests handled differently across teams. So when there's variation, it creates vulnerability. If one manager agrees and another refuses without clear reasoning, that's where potential claims emerge. And really what this is about is consistency and evidence-based reasoning. That's what's become really critical. And thirdly, redundancy decisions as well, or poorly evidenced redundancy decisions. Redundancy itself is lawful when handled correctly, but poor documentation of selection criteria and consultation processes is where employers are exposed. The decision might be fair, but if the evidence isn't clear, it becomes difficult to defend. When it comes to tribunals, they often look less at intention and more at process. Fourthly, managers acting without updated guidance. So most managers are well intentioned. The risk arises when they're making decisions based on outdated understanding. So it's really important that managers are up to date with what these changes too. When day one rights expand, when enforcement strengthens, when documentation expectations increase, managers need to know. So otherwise, they act in good faith but outside of current requirements. And then finally, outdated contracts or policy. So many organizations have legacy documentation that hasn't fully kept pace with legislative change, even up to before these changes. So sometimes it's minor wording, sometimes it's structural misalignment, but inconsistencies between written policy and actual practice really do create risk. But most risk arises from inconsistency, and I think consistency is the key word throughout all of this. It's not about intent. A lot of people want to do well and want to do the right thing, but a lot of this arises from inconsistency. So the organizations who struggle, they're not careless, they're just inconsistent. The goal here isn't to become overly cautious. That's not what we're saying. It's about aligning policy, documentation, and then subsequent manager behavior as a result. So as I've mentioned again a few times really, is your manager's aware this either works well or falls. This can be done through clear documentation, but training is so important in providing clarity and ensuring a consistent approach across the board and building confidence in these areas. And these are just some of the things that managers should really be aware of and be building capability in. So explaining rights clearly and confidently to team members, applying policy consistently and fairly across different situations and all situations, handling sensitive conversations calmly and professionally, recognizing when to escalate to HR for advice, maintaining clear, accurate documentation throughout. So this isn't about making managers legal experts. They just need the confidence and clarity to apply these changes, which will come from having the documentation and then the training as a result. So we at Cornerstone can support through bespoke training and our wider Lead with Confidence course that helps develop some of these skills. And more information on this can be found on our Cornerstone Resources website, which you'll see on screen as well. But if you want more information on that, do email me at joe@cornerstoneresources.co.uk or contact your consultant for more information as well. Something I just wanted to mention briefly is this readiness snapshot. Again, if you want to take a screenshot of this now, these are the things we're really asking that you cover off and do review. I won't go through these, I won't speak through these in too much detail now, but as I've covered them across the rest of the session. But do take a screenshot of this and do speak to your consultant about reviewing these things and moving these things forward as well. Because preparation in this sense really does reduce the exposure you'll have to risk as well. But as I mentioned, you're not alone in any of this. We are around at Cornerstone to support you. Whether you need a one-off review or ongoing support, we can help you navigate these changes with confidence and practical support as well. Some organizations just want a one-off policy review, others want someone to call when something tricky arises, or some people want us to be really involved in creating and reviewing this work and updating it. So wherever you're at, we're here to support you. We can support you wherever you need us and can provide proactive consultation too. As we come to the end of this interactive online session, and a webinar in the sense that you're watching a recording, this is the webinar series we have coming up. So as I've mentioned this Friday, on Friday the 13th of March, I'll be delivering a SSP changes webinar, which will go into a bit more detail on that change, what it means for organizations, what behaviors need to be in place, what do you need to prepare for as an organization, some really practical tips there. Again, I won't touch on the rest of the program in detail, but we're running two of these sessions a month, two or three of them. Some are paid in the sense that you can either pay £99 per organization plus VAT, or use one of your retained hours, one of your monthly allocated hours that you have with us at Cornerstone if you're one of our clients. We also offer some free sessions, a bit like this one. Again, just so you can attend these if you'd like to. But we have a mix of sessions that really, in essence, are building on the Employment Rights Act changes. So each of the sessions will look to delve into a specific change or something that you need to prepare for or be trained upon, whether it's a manager training or specific change that's happening, and then helping you understand those updates and what it means for your organization and what you should prepare for. So all these sessions will be really helpful and practical across the whole of 2026, we hope. We're also developing an Employment Rights Act page, which should be live, which you can have a look at. Again, it's what you need to know. It covers a roadmap across of the changes coming up. A lot of what I've talked about today, but again, all in one place on the website. So you can visit our website and find that too. So thank you for listening to this recording, and that brings us to the end of the session. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon on one of our sessions throughout 2026. Thank you very much.